Hello, I'm Paul Blunden, founder of UX247, and we help product owners, researchers and designers deliver high-performing products and services. Today is another interview in my series with product leaders, and I'll be talking to one of the founders of Field and co-creator of the product Field, a sense-making framework for product development. We will hear more about that later, but for now, let's meet KP. Hi, KP. Great to see you again. Can I ask you to introduce yourself for our audience?
Sure, Paul. Let me do that. I'm KP. I'm co-founder and co-CEO of Field, and we provide software and services for organizations and teams who aim to become product-centric, which basically means that they consider their internal and external products as the center of their organization. And well, that's what we circle around when we offer our services. Maybe you can dive into that a little bit more, elaborate on that later in the questions.
Yeah, I hope so. It's one of the reasons I'm really interested to talk to you, because it's certainly something we observe going on in our customers. And how long have you been working in Field? I know it's your own agency, and what encouraged you to launch the business?
Well, I'm in product like forever. I started my professional career in the web frenzy in the early 90s. So there was a lot of product development or product creation going on back then in the tech way. As you can imagine, over the decades, I learned a handful or two of stuff that let me grow, but also let the companies and the products grow that I was involved in. Not all of them, obviously, failures are part of it as well. And at some point, I realized that, well, maybe a lot of the stuff can be used or reused, the stuff, the insights and the learnings that I gather together, not just myself, but with peers around me. And so we worked on kind of tools, cognitive tools, facilitation tools to help ourselves and other organizations get better at product development, basically. And that started 10 years ago. And the company that I founded or co-founded, that I'm involved in right now is from, we started in the midst of the first lockdown of the pandemic, which was an interesting experience to start a company in that kind of environment. But anyway, it was worth it. It was really, really fun to do that. And yeah, that's basically in a nutshell, what I am, well, my path towards this company, or this, you call it agency. It's kind of an agency. It's also a software company. How I'm at right now.
Yeah, of course. Apologies, because you're right. The software aspect of it, I'm really interested in, because the company, I mean, behind the company, it's around the product Field, isn't it?
Yes.
Can you tell a bit more about that?
Yes, the product Field is our key tool that we have developed like 10 years ago. As I mentioned before, we are always interested in how we can generalize principles, generalize learnings that we gathered along the way. And at some point, we thought, well, what we actually might need is a visual tool that would not just allow us as product people, but also all the other people in the organization we work with or we worked in to be part of that product development process or product development context. And it needs to be visual, because if you don't visualize these kinds of coherences and relationships between people and aspects of product, it's very hard for people to follow that. So we created a visual tool for just that. We call it a sense-making framework for collaborative work on the product and product strategy. And that happened, or we introduced that framework 2015, I guess, in Hamburg, as a tool that we used ourselves. And then it somehow became a thing, at least first in a German community, and then even internationally. organizations picked up on that method to become a little bit more serious about dealing with the inherent complexity of product innovation. So that's the product field. And I can surely tell you about the product field itself, but that would maybe require another session and maybe even some visual tools, because it's very hard to describe something that is actually meant to be visual without using a visual whiteboard or something.
Yeah, I completely understand. And obviously through Field, you've worked with a range of organizations. Can I ask how you see the sort of focus on product evolving in those organizations from your perspective? You mentioned sort of working with companies who want to be product centric. What's going on there in your view?
Well, when you look at the companies, the product companies, specifically in tech, that are really successful, they have a few things in common. And one of the things that they have in common is, in my observation, is what we call product centricity. And it's not the opposite of customer centricity or user centricity. That's completely different, different flight level or different aspect here. It's really how they organize their companies. And this product centricity actually comes in various shapes and various appearances. The first that we all know is called intrapreneurship, made famous in the 80s by Steve Jobs, who created the Macintosh as an intrapreneur outside the main building of Apple, having gathered a team around him that was fully autonomous, like you build it, you run it, and you sell it. Everything was there, and that was really the first big product-centric approach that we all know of. We don't call it product-centric, but it's basically what it means. And then there are a lot of different models that appeared or emerged over time that are actually a specific shape of product centricity, like the Spotify model we all know that never really happened, but still the concept was valuable. It's product centricity at its best. It's like the squads that are autonomous, aligned by strategy. That is basically what we mean by product centricity. Or Martin Fowler, who one of the guys who signed this Agile Manifesto, when he introduced this microservices architecture that has little projects, little services that are like value streams, like internal products built autonomously. So that is kind of the technical interpretation of product centricity. Or there are different other shapes, like the Amazon way, like Werner Vogel is CTO of Amazon, who said, you build it, you run it. So that's kind of one principle of product centricity, that you don't just have this guy who's developed, or this team who's developing software, and then there's this team who's in charge of delivery, and then there's a charge of discovery, and then there's someone in charge of distribution. No, it's one team who is accountable for the whole experience of the product, be it an internal product or an external product. And that's what I mean when I say product centricity. That's what's happening. And a lot of different appearances. And I could go on for that with it forever, because that's I'm really passionate and ambitious when it comes to product centricity. And let me just stop here and focus on other stuff.
Well, thanks. I mean, the description's really useful to sort of put a stake in the ground about what you mean by that. And one of the things I wanted to understand through this series of interviews is sort of building a picture of the kind of problems product owners or product teams face. I mean, I'm trying to sort of get an overall view, but if you've got a view on the top three, or what do you think the main issues are, it would be really interesting to understand, particularly around the sort of changes to the way the organizations worked.
Are you referring to the product team or to the role of the product owner?
Well, I think the product team, actually, because what I've learned, well, I mean, be interested in your perspective on both, because what I've learned through these interviews is the role of the product owner seems to depend on the individual, the organization, the structure they have, rather than any sort of set method.
Yes.
So it's hard to say that one in particular, because it can be different in any organization?
Exactly, that's what I observe as well. If we talk about the product owner, there is a lot of room for interpretation, a lot of diversity out there. And I just had a discussion with one of the leading voices in this whole product owner thing in Germany, Tim Klein. He has a podcast about that. It's really kind of, he knows the stuff. And we couldn't even agree on the term product. What is the product? And so it was really difficult to talk about the role of the product owner. And it was a very interesting discussion. And so what I see is, well, it very much depends on individual strengths and approaches and attitudes and stuff like that. But what I find interesting is when we look at the product owner, or if we regard it as a part of the Scrum role of a Kanban process, if we just reduce it to that, what I find there are basically three different impediments or problems that they face in organizations, specifically in regard to users and customers, because that's what they are actually meant to work for. They had to bring in the customer and user perspective into the process, right? That's their purpose. And the first thing is that they actually often really don't want to deal with users and customers. And that's, again, how they are individually structured. They don't really care. They meant, okay, well, I do the backlog refinement or whatever, that's fine. The second thing is that they want to, but they don't really know how to deal with users and customers. Maybe they have some dashboards with user analytics and stuff like that, but really dealing with the actual needs of users and customers, talking to them and really understanding that's not easy, right? And if you are just a standard certified product owner, that's basically not what you're educated or trained for. And the third thing is, you really want that and you really know how to do it, but you are not allowed to do that. And that's one of the main problems I face, or not me personally, but when I talk to product owners and companies who are really ambitious about it, but then they say, okay, no, they don't let me talk to customers. Because either it's the product manager with this whole, with the whole market view and the viability of the business and marketability and all that. This person might be allowed to talk to customers, but even then, maybe not. Or it's the salespeople, the market people who say, no, this is our domain. Please don't, please don't get in touch with our customers. You would only confuse them. And that's I think a very, very big problem that you just, even if you want to do that you are not allowed to do it.
That seems incredible. I mean, you know, my agency is a research agency, so we talk to customers all the time. It seems incredible that brands, you know, they don't allow their product teams to talk to customers. You mentioned about product centricity earlier and that it's not the same as customer centricity. I mean, how customer centric are the brands you work with? Yeah, given what you just said.
Some more than others, obviously. So that's a spectrum, obviously. And it's not just a spectrum in terms of, okay, these companies are user-centric and these are not, or these are in the middle. It's also a spectrum over time for every one of those. So being product-centric or aiming for a product-centric operating model is usually enabling those companies to be more user and customer centric if it comes to discovery. So that's basically how these things fit together. The one thing is how you organize your teams, and this would enable you and the product team to be more customer and user centric in terms of discovery and research. So that's basically part of being product centric, that this is that there is a strong focus on these kinds of things. And the more product centric you get as a company, the more likely it is to be more user centric when it comes to creating user value. So that's my experience. And there are some companies who are further along this path than others, obviously, and some are really interested in speeding up that process, and some aren't. But that's reality, right? But the main thing is these things are connected: product centricity and user centricity, and my goal is to enable that, or to facilitate these companies and these organizations into that direction.
And do you think this is a question then of maturity of the organization? The more mature ones are more customer centric, or what are the barriers then that stop them getting there?
Maturity is a difficult concept, because what does it mean anyway? I mean, maturity in regard to what? So there are a lot of mature companies around that are not really good at these things, and the other way around. So I don't know if it's a matter of maturity. It's rather a matter of ambition in the top leadership. And what I realized is that companies that are led by people who are just managers and not owners, that they tend to be less risk willing. They don't want to change things that much. They say, okay, it's all established, let's just drag along, it's good enough. And if you have someone who's really invested with skin in the game, then these people really, well, they have a drive towards this kind of change and towards user centricity, and also organizing the company around products.
Right, that's really interesting. And I wanted to move the conversation on to maybe asking you about a product success or a project or engagement you're particularly proud of, particularly perhaps where the product field has played a role. Yeah,
I mean, let me answer this in two steps. The first is my favorite product that I've been involved in back then in the mid-90s. I wasn't a product manager, because product management role was purely for fast-moving consumer goods. We didn't have these product management roles back then for digital, and so that was basically my first product that I created, and it's still around and still growing. And it didn't have anything to do with the product field, because it was like a long time ago. But I learned a lot of stuff that came that I used to developing the product field. And this is called a Presseportal. It's a German platform for organizations to put their statements or make their statements public, and for journalists to address these or to have a look at these. And that was kind of interesting experience back then. That was when I fell in love with that. And it's obviously the first successful product that you are involved in is maybe like the first child you have, or something that you are really connected to. So that's the first thing. But when it comes to using the product field, it's not really a product that I'm proud of. It's how the product field helped this company, the specific company, to use the product field to understand what they need to do to become a product-centric organization, because it's also an assessment tool. So what we did was we used the product field to assess the strategic quality of all the products, and then we found patterns how the organization didn't do very well in specific areas. And so the CEO learned that with that kind of assessment and said, okay, if that's the case, we need to invest in that specific area, which was organizational change, because the specific area that they invested in was, we have to create a real powerful product development unit, people that are really capable of leading a product development process. And that was, and I'm still really proud. And that was kind of the first moment when I realized that the product field is not just to to use it for a specific product innovation or product development, it's also an assessment that will allow an organization to understand the state or the maturity of their organization when it comes to product centricity, when it comes to being digitally competent. And so that's what I think the product field added the most value when I look at it from now.
I think it's one of the, I've only got to learn about the product field recently. Actually, we've used it in one of our clients. But one of the things I love about it is that impact on the organization. Got a bit of a background in sort of HR-y stuff, but it seems all of the conversations I have with product leaders in all the different roles, nearly all of the challenges are human, people, organization related.
Yeah.
And having tools that help to visualize what's going on there, I think are so valuable, because yeah, it just seems to hold organizations back, that the organizations kind of become these Frankensteinian monsters that don't really work very effectively. Yeah, anyway, one of the things that I want to understand, which is probably going to play a role in that, is whether you had a view on AI and how it might affect the product arena in particular, or product teams, if it will at all, in your view.
Well, there is a spectrum. I actually, we in our company, we did a research project that was funded by funds from the state, and we called it Product Coach AI, which was based, it used the logic of the product field, the geometry that the product field provides, and built an algorithm based on that geography, aiming to help product managers to always find the best way forward in their work, and not just what feature to build, but to say, okay, we need to do we need to understand the user better, or we need to have a better idea on the competitive landscape, or we do have to think about our goals a little bit more strategically, or stuff like that. And this AI gave some advice, some recommendations on what methods to use to address those challenges. So this is one of the things, of the very specific, how I think that these AI kind of tools help product people to make a better job. In general, I think it will help us a lot in making sense of user data, a lot of data that comes in, and then it's very hard to sift through it and understand it. And that's obviously a field that AI can help us with. Then another, like, it's a very provocative, maybe unpopular opinion. I always think of the role of the product manager as a bridge technology, which means actually it's not needed in a perfect world. In a perfect world, teams organize or build products by themselves. They don't need this product management role. And I think AI will play a role in that, if that's ever going to happen. It's just an idea. That's just my thought. But that is also something that I think that there is some kind of AI that does a lot of the stuff that the product manager does today, and helps a team to collaborate on product delivery, discovery, distribution, and development.
So I can understand why that would be a controversial opinion.
Yeah.
So that's a really interesting one. And thanks also for sharing a real world example from the work you did, the development of the algorithm, because when I've asked these questions, a lot of people are speculating on what's going on, and there are very few actual real world examples of generative AI being used effectively. There's a lot of stuff going on, but no, that's really useful. And well, finally, KP, can I ask, what's your biggest learning since you've been sort of in this product space, which obviously you've been in for a very long time?
Well, that's a tough one, because I learn every day, and it's really hard to put it into ranking. But when I think about it, the biggest learning is probably when I realized that I have always been in product, no matter the role that I have had. I have been a project manager in marketing, like in the 90s. I've been a CTO. I've been a business developer. I've been a sales guy. I have been a managing director. I have been a lot of things, and I had a lot of roles. And at some point, I realized they are all roles around the product and the center, and they are all required. And so that was maybe the biggest learning, that every person, every role in the company is part of the picture when it comes to product, and product is like in the center. And I learned that, well, 15 years ago, I realized that, and from then on, everything changed for me, because then I worked on tools to facilitate workshops, to invite other people to learn the very same thing, that they are actually connected to the product. Like even the HR guys or the legal guys, they are all important parts of developing successful products. And to build that connection, that was kind of the learning that the connections are there and that they are needed, and what do we do to facilitate those connections? That was kind of my biggest breakthrough, say 15 years ago.
Oh, that's a fascinating insight and a perfect place to end, actually, because it sort of leads back nicely to product centricity.
Yes.
KP, thanks so much for your time. It's been really interesting talking to you and learning your views and from your experience over the last X many years. Thanks again. I really look forward to watching this back, actually.
Likewise, Paul. Thank you very much for inviting me. That was a very pleasant conversation.
Welcome. If you want to find out more about the product field and KP's company, I'll put the details in the chat, including links to his profile and website later. I hope you found that as interesting as I did. It's becoming very clear to me that product centricity and customer centricity are highly complementary, but that the barriers to both are mainly in the organization. Interesting that KP suggests AI might be a solution to that challenge, quite controversial, as he said. But I'll be watching with interest, see what happens there. Anyway, that was another interview in my series with product leaders. Do check out the channel to find the others. My name is Paul Blunden. I'm founder of UX247, and we help product people, designers, and people who do research to deliver high-performing products and services. You can find out more about what we do by visiting our website, that's UX247.com, or find me on LinkedIn and message me there. And better still, subscribe to this channel, and there'll be another interview coming along soon. Thanks for watching.